brought to you almost live from the Dude in the Basement Studios. Why? Because that's where the good stuff is. It's Sips, Suds, and Smokes with your smoking host, the good old boys. And now it's sippin' time.
Hello and welcome to this Suds episode where everything good in life is worth discussing. We are the best thing on at 2 a.m. and we thank you for choosing to listen to us instead of medieval poetry with Mary. Wherefore art thou, O Philippa, in the dewy mist of the fallen rain? So you're on Sip, Suds, and Smokes. I am one of your hosts here this evening. This is good old boy Mike. Joining me here on this show are good old boy Kevin.
How's it going?
And good old boy Will.
Hello there.
We are recording this episode at the Music City Tippler in Nashville, Tennessee. My thanks to them for hosting us for this show. You can catch Will and Kevin behind the bar sometimes here. So I have actually been to the Tippler in New York City, which is actually under the Chelsea Market on 15th Street. It's a small sign on the east on the side of the building. You just look for the hordes of people from Google across the street, and that is where you're headed. Just follow all the Googleites, and that is definitely where everybody is going to show up. So if you want to know about the latest tech talk in New York City, head to the Tippler in New York City. That would be my top pick, because there's nothing like a bunch of tech people with really fat expense accounts to make for a really great evening. While I love the thrill of actually finding the Tippler in New York City, this Nashville location is expansive. It is really nice. It's very inviting. It has a very cool bar back piece that I could stare at all day long. And I'm talking about the furniture. I'm not talking about the hot bartenders that are behind the bar all day long. It's really a very cool place. So I'm really glad that we actually got to be here and record here. So it's a real pleasure. Listen, our sip segments are all about wine, distilled spirits, tea, and coffee. Today is a mixed drink show with distilled spirits. Will and Kevin are masters of the art, and good old boy Mike has some former experience tending bar as well. Today we're going to cover some classics, and I am looking forward to this because there are some great classics that you should get to know. I would definitely tell you that these are some things that you probably want to figure out how to make at home at your own wet bar at some point in time. You'll definitely be the hostess with the mostest if you can figure that out. These drinks are actually pretty easy to make for the most part, but there's a lot of things you can screw up incredibly easy, very quickly. Both a combination of the recipes as well as the technique in making some of these classic drinks might take a little bit of trial and error, but we'll lead you through some of those things to make it a little bit easier for you. So we'll have these recipes online, and I'll try to credit the source where possible. Now, listen, some of these recipes have been copied, renamed, rehashed, published, pilfered so many times that nobody actually owns the recipe. So I will certainly do my best to try and do that. So there are 4 classics we're going to get to go through on this episode today. First up is going to be the infamous Bushwacker. Kevin's going to get to talk about this one. The perfect old-fashioned. Will's going to cover that one. The Moscow Mule and the French 75. So those are the 4 drinks we're going to get to go through. Will and Kevin are going to split these up, and they'll be introducing the drinks as we go along. And we'll be talking about these. But first up, we're going to talk about our Sips ratings. Will, you have the honors of going over our Sips ratings for today.
All right, so our Sips ratings are 1, give me a glass of water to wash out my mouth.
Water.
We might have one in that category.
2, nice, but what else do you have?
Well, isn't that nice?
3, interesting. What was this again?
Interesting.
4, let's keep this secret to ourselves. Pour me another.
That's classified.
And 5, oh my, I was unaware anything could be this good.
Oh my goodness!
Now, let's rate Will's ability to read the
That was. Did I do okay?
I'm going to go ahead and give him a 1.
Oh, God.
Nice. Give me a glass of water to wash out my mouth.
Yeah.
You know, I was thinking a -2 rating might be, in the offing.
Was it that week?
You have to attend method acting class, with Kevin.
With Kevin.
I don't have
little more
the
dramatic
love
flair
and charm
next
with my
time.
voice that Kevin does.
Anyway, we'll let you rehearse that, and we'll let you work your way up to a 1. Okay. So a really great show that I'm looking forward to talking about these classic drinks. And I know this is a mainstay of what you do here at the Tippler. I mean, you guys make speakeasy throwback drinks all day long.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that you don't make all of these here, but I happen to start with a collection that was a good blend of some classics, that are kind of made, in a lot of places. And so I'm really looking forward to the discussion about a lot of these. Some of these drinks people just may not know because they're not made at every single establishment anymore. Part of it is a lack of skill. Some of it is a demand issue. Some of it is just, finding the ingredients is, even a little difficult as well. You've come back for the remaining segment that we have on mixed drinks. We're actually talking about 4 classics on this episode. We have 2 more to talk about. We're going to talk about the Moscow Mule. We're going to talk about the French 75. 2 really great drinks. I cannot wait for the rest of the discussion. Up first is, we're going to talk about the Moscow Mule.
So the Moscow Mule is a cocktail that's been around since 1941. It's recently made a very, very large swing back into sort of the popular drinking group of people. I mean, it is vodka, lime juice, and ginger beer. Those basic ingredients put together over crushed ice, traditionally in a copper mug. The first Moscow Mule that was ever made used lemon juice instead of lime juice. It was popularized in 1941 at the Cock and Bowl restaurant bar on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood. The owner of the restaurant and a couple friends decided, hey, we've got this ginger beer, we've got lemon juice and vodka, why not try them together? And they did, and they loved it. It has been switched, and nowadays people use lime juice because that accompanies the vodka better. So the ratio is about 2 ounces of vodka, 0.75 ounces of lime juice, and you top whatever glass, traditionally a copper mug, with ginger beer. The whole copper mug phenomenon plays a big part. When people order a Moscow Mule at a bar, they assume it's going to come in a copper mug or ask if it can. One thing is there's the presentation aspect of it, but the other thing is the copper, it conducts temperature, whereas glass contains it. So what that means is that the ice is going to melt faster, and it's going to dilute it a little more, which will help curb some of the sweetness from the ginger beer and some of the tartness from the lime juice. So that is really the only flavor change. Aside from that, it is just kind of a thing. People associate Moscow Mules with copper mugs. That being said, most restaurants and bars that I know of will get their first few copper mugs, and then that's it, because people love to steal them. So if you're listening, please don't steal the copper mugs. They're about $40 a pop, and at the Tippler we had 125 stolen in our first 3 weeks of running them.
They've been low-jacked.
Low-jacked, yep, totally gone, and there is nothing you can do about it.
So with this drink, the thing that I hear in the background is "Hooray for Hollywood." It's the thing I keep on hearing in the background. So, it almost sounds like, they started to create this, drink out of the fact that they had a huge surplus of ingredients. I mean, when I tend to think about a lot of things that are in Southern California, I mean, they have a lot of citrus products. They have limes and lemons, and, they have a lot of access into the, ginger market of things coming over from Asia. So I just really wonder if this was what I would consider a warehouse walkthrough. Could you make some crap out of this so that we could sell some, sell something to get rid of all this? You guys talked about the magic cage, at the bar we're at earlier tonight, but I really wonder if it's one of those moments where it was just a matter of trying to overcome a financial windfall, because they had a surplus of a lot of these ingredients.
I think that as far as where it originated from, it came from it was a surplus of ingredients. I mean, you have all that. You have the ginger beer, etc. But this was the popularization of the Moscow Mule in the 1940s was because of a relationship between individuals. The first Moscow Mule was made because the owner of the Cock and Bull restaurant also owned Cock and Bull ginger beer. He owned Cock and Bull products. And the first Moscow Mule was made with when he was sitting down with Pierre Smirnoff, who, if you know what Smirnoff is, he happens to own a lot of vodka. So you've got
a lot
exactly.
of vodka.
So you've got Mr. Smirnoff and Mr. Gingerbeer sitting in the same room together, and they come up with this
they
drink.
Got very good Hollywood women.
Yeah,
exactly. It works perfectly. And so you've got these very powerful people that happen to have stumbled upon a very delicious combination of their mutual products. So all of a sudden, you've got a big Hollywood cocktail in LA, sets on fire with it, and the Moscow Mule takes off.
That's funny because the Moscow Mule has just come back, probably in the last 10 years, as one of the biggest classic cocktails, coming on back around, and it had a decline, and probably mostly because of the Red Scare, the USSR, and all that, during the 80s, no one wanted to drink a Moscow Mule because they'd be thrown into some internment camp somewhere or whatever. But it's come back around, and it's huge. It's one of the biggest cocktails to come back around this time, and it's
right behind the Bushwacker.
Yeah, right behind the Bushwacker. But it's every single restaurant probably has some sort of variation on it. It's easy, it's inexpensive, and you can do with anything. It's all about, really, the main thing about the Moscow Mule is the ginger beer. It's all about ginger beer.
I completely agree. So, I agree that the story originates from a lot of the origins of the fact that the Cock and Bull actually had the ginger beer to work with right from the get-go. But that is the base of this product, isn't it, Will? And I love the story that you have about the way that you guys approach this drink here at the Tippler as well. And we actually talked about some variation in the way that you would approach this. From, are you choosing to make it with some way or fermentation? And there's a lot of variation between that.
So at the Tippler, we have a house-made ginger beer, and we do what, in our opinion, is sort of the most effective way at making a ginger beer to be used in Moscow Mule, which means that we make essentially a ginger syrup. We have other spices and herbs that we will put in to add flavor and increase the flavor profile, and then we will force carbonate that, and that's what we top our vodka, lime juice, and crushed ice with. To make a ginger beer through the fermentation process means that you have to introduce yeast into the equation. And what yeast means is inconsistency. When you're introducing yeast, it's extremely difficult to make
put nature in the driver's seat.
You're throwing, you're rolling the dice a bit. It's a different flavor profile where we believe you can get the same, we think that you can get a better product using the ginger syrup method, where you will cook down sugar, ginger, water, herbs, and then force carbonate it, and you know exactly what you're going to get. That syrup is your flavor, and then you force carbonate it.
Exactly. And we also control the carbonation of it as well, so you can get something that's super carbonated or something that's slightly carbonated. We're able to control that, and then here we put it on draft, so it comes out right on our tap lines, goes right into your drink. It's easy, it's fast, it's consistent the whole time.
Well, I hear some of my homebrew buddies, calling party foul.
Yeah.
On that moment, like, dude, that is like a Brix moment, and you're just basically throwing Lipton iced tea in a Brix machine and hitting on button. But, I think the better point about the story is it is a little bit about. It's not a little bit. It is about control. Specifically of what you're working with, so that you can provide a consistent product. And I think that is the point that you're really trying to get across here with the way that you are, the style of the ginger beer that you're using. I've had a lot of ginger beer that a lot of homebrew friends have provided to me. Great stuff. Don't get me wrong. I love a lot of homebrew products, and I love a lot of the ginger beer that I've had. But I can't say that it's one of those things that I would look at and go, that's how I would make the perfect Moscow Mule. I hate to say it, but I would probably, in fact, I wouldn't probably, I know that I go to the shelf and I pull off a fever tree in order to make, a Moscow Mule today. So, a story that I had, you talked a little bit about some of the popularization, of this drink. I was in St. Louis rather recently, and I was at a place that had some really great drinks on tap, and I was just sitting there at the bar, and there were two young ladies that came in. The wait list to get into this place was like an hour and a half. It was crazy. I was like, I'm glad I'm sitting here and enjoying this food. But there were a lot of people that were outside just waiting, just to get in the restaurant itself. And sure enough, it was a gaggle of, 4 or 5, 20-something young ladies that came in and said, I want a Moscow Mule. And I just I almost started to bust laughing when she said that. I was just like, no, I don't think that's what you want. I think what you want is a lot of vodka that has a little bit of ginger beer in it, that looks cute in a copper mug. So, I try to look beyond the popularization, of this drink over time, and really kind of look to the essence of the drink and look to the classic elements, that it's presenting around it. And so I really love the story, around this as well, Will, that while I think that there is a lot of popularization of the way that this drink came around to be, and as well as kind of a bit of the resurgence of it, as far as I'm concerned, it contains some really classic ingredients. I can't think of anything that is more fundamental than ginger beer. And the fact that at least the Tippler here is committed to the flavor profile, maybe they haven't committed to the purest sense of creating their own ginger beer, but they've committed to the certain profile so that the drink can always be consistent. And it's really awesome. I mean, that was the thing that I liked about it.
Yeah.
You actually served me some of the ginger beer earlier tonight, just all by itself, not like mixed in, as a Moscow Mule, but just all by itself. And what did I pick? Like 2 of the 8 ingredients that were in it.
Yep.
I didn't even come close to getting it all. And if I had to pick the magic ingredient, it would be the cinnamon.
Yeah.
I mean, that is not something that I think you typically find, in a lot of ingredients.
It's real quick. It's Saigon cinnamon.
It's Saigon cinnamon, so and it's hotter cinnamon.
Yeah.
It's up in your face.
And the flavor from the cinnamon actually comes from the stalks of that. So when you're putting it in and it comes from the stalks. So it's not your ground cinnamon or other things. You're putting it in and you break it open, and then when you cook it down, that's how you make the initial syrup. Now, two quick things online of what you were saying about us making, a consistent product with the ginger beer, which is very important. You have to think the difference between a brewery, which can use yeast, and they'll have, and I am not saying that that beer, you cannot have a consistent product using yeast. You can, but with most of the craft breweries and local breweries, they will have different batches, or they're small batch, and the flavors will change over time. But when you run a restaurant or bar, it's very important to have a consistent product. That's how you build customer base, and it's how you maintain customer base and stay open for a couple of years.
I thought it was about serving panty grease.
And depends what kind of bar you want to run. And the other thing I was going to say is that I can't get panty grease off my head now. It's just, that term is its own beast. But the Moscow Mule, it's a young classic cocktail. It's as we were talking about with the Bushwacker earlier, it came out in 1940s, and initially it was used with lemon juice, and most people learned that lime juice accompanies vodka better. Now, if they're going to do a variation where they use bourbon, they might introduce lemon juice on that. But when it comes to such a young classic cocktail, you can't mess with the base of it, and the base, I would say, for a Moscow Mule would be vodka, citrus, ginger beer. But what you can do is within that play around a bit. So you've got your vodka, you can do a hotter vodka, less hot vodka, your ginger beer, which is, as we all sort of talked about earlier, the ginger beer is the driving force. So with your ginger beer, you can do so much with it, how you make it, how you ferment it, what flavors you introduce to it. It's going to define the cocktail based on the ginger beer, and there is no strict classic definition for what a ginger beer is. So because it's young classic, you have a lot of room to play around with while still staying true to its nature.
So, you've actually made 2 variations for us to review here tonight, here at the Tippler. So, let's talk about and review the 2 versions you've made. First off, why don't you introduce? You've made one that's traditional, and you've made one that's a variation. So, what's the difference?
So the traditional is 2 ounces of Russian standard vodka, 3/4 ounces of fresh squeezed lime juice, have to be fresh squeezed, crushed ice, topped with ginger beer. That's your tried and true standard Moscow Mule. And Russian standard is a good vodka. It's got a good bottle price point, and we use it here because it's, a step above well. But in all honesty, when it comes to the Moscow Mule, you have a good bit of leeway with what vodka you choose to use. The variation we made, which is not super popular amongst your average customer base, but I found that all bartenders, tequila people, anyone who's ever had mezcal loves, is the Mezcal Mule, and that's 2 ounces of DM Vita, 3/4 of lime juice, crushed ice topped with ginger beer. Mezcal is a tequila from the Oaxaca region. It's fermented different than normal tequila. Sorry, it's not a tequila, it's an agave-based liqueur. It is fermented agave nectar, but they ferment it underground and they will smoke things on top of it. So you can have like chicken mezcal, where they will smoke chickens and other wood and stuff over the mezcal, and so it comes out, I call it the whiskey of tequilas. It is super smoky, agave-based liqueur, and so it's going to remind you of tequila, but you get a lot of smoky notes from it, and that smoke just burns through all the sweetness of the Moscow Mule, so it's not just the lime juice that's cutting through the flavor, it's the smoke, too, of that mezcal.
Yeah. So what's your favorite variety, and what's your rating on that one?
My rating for the Moscow Mule would be, I would give it a 3 personally. I'm not a huge fan for overly sweet cocktails. I believe that the Moscow Mule is very good and very simple, but to me it's just, you're not getting any love from the spirit, and I'm a big spirit person. It is very hard to have a spirit forward Moscow Mule, and that to me is a pretty key aspect when it comes to judging any cocktail.
So, which variety do you like?
Oh, sorry, variety. I would go mezcal. Personally, my favorite Mule is Tanqueray Rainpour, a nice light gin, lime juice, our house-made ginger beer, and crushed ice. That would be my ideal Mule. But I'd go mezcal.
Interesting. Kevin, what do you think about these Moscow Mules that we've made?
First mules, they're delicious. It's definitely all about, a lot about the vessel. It's got to be in a copper mug or pewter, either one. If you can get your hands on some, they're great. I would agree with Will on the variations. Definitely, like the gin is very impressive, the Tanqueray Rainpour. I like to do variations with grapefruit bitters and grapefruit juice. With the gin, that's a great variation.
Interesting choice.
Yeah.
I like that.
I do like the mezcal. I like the bourbon. I'll literally drink it with anything. So
Yeah.
It's one of those cocktails that you can put any spirit in and it'll change it. I do like it with rye as well, and lemon juice instead. But my rating, I'll probably take a 4 on the rating. For our Mule here at the Tippler.
Well, really fascinating that to bring out both variations. I'm gonna be kind and actually rate both. So I would say for the classic Mule, I would say I'm gonna give it a solid 3. Great. I just love the ginger beer. It is so good. Will, you're just a kindred spirit, because to me, it's a little difficult for me to surrender myself to that much ginger beer in a drink, and
it's all about the booze.
I guess, I don't know, part of it is just the old-fashioned we talked about. Just really give me a really good bourbon at the end of the day. But I have to say, between the 2 that you gave, the mezcal and the traditional Moscow Mule, I have to say I really like the mezcal. I talked about this in a kind of a strange way, that it wasn't just the ginger beer, but it was kind of almost the only thing I could think of was wood putty. It's just because of the aroma that wood putty sometimes has. was what this mezcal was presenting, but it really, really worked well. And the earthiness that it just kind of introduced into the drink, I really thought that it took a drink from being, a 3 to a solid 4. And I like the mezcal version itself. So I probably, if I had to come back and order this, I would probably have it with mezcal. And I can think of a lot of different versions of mezcal that this would definitely work with, for sure.
Get weird, try scotch. That's good.
Wow. Okay. There's the challenge for the next show for sure. Hey, listen, we're just going to take just one quick moment here, let some stations chime in with a bunch of useful information. We're going to be right back. We're going to talk about the French 75 with Kevin. We'll be right back with Trains with Kevin. Thanks for coming back to Sip, Suds, and Smokes. And we're going to talk about the French 75 next. I have to say, I've been waiting, all day, to talk about this. And Kevin is going to do a wonderful job of giving us the history of this drink, as well as talking about the variations in this drink as well. I'm going to chime in quite a bit, I'd have to say, because this is pretty close to my own heart as well. Kevin, tell us all about the French 75.
French 75, definitely a classic. It's one of our most popular cocktails. It can be drinking any time, really, but definitely a brunch cocktail nowadays. And traditionally, it is made with cognac. Most people don't understand that, but most days if you go out to a bar and you order a French 75, it's going to be with gin. We'll talk about our preferences later. So the drink was really created about 1915 ish in a bar in Paris, and it was named after basically like a field artillery, almost like a cannon at the time, because it had that kick. It had so much kick to it that it would, that's what they named it after. They would just hit
75
you.
millimeter.
It would hit you in the morning or whatever time you were drinking it. It was
group therapy.
Yeah, exactly.
What was your name again?
It was brought back to America at the Stork Club in New York, and it really became kind of a popular cocktail there at the time. And then most people see it nowadays in the Savoy cocktail book from the Harry Craddock's version of it, and he used gin actually in that version of it. But that's kind of where it really got popular en masse, and they normally used gin or cognac in it, but cognac is definitely the most old school style of doing it. Has definitely like a more depth to it. But you can find a good gin out there, either or. It's great. So it's basically a kind of a variation almost on a champagne cocktail. So we're gonna use for ours that we made today. We used an ounce of cognac. We use Landy cognac, which is it's great in cocktails. It's great in variety. But any cognac or a lot of brandies you could use. And then we just do a half ounce of lemon juice, fresh lemon juice, half ounce of simple syrup, just a 1-to-1. You're going to shake that up. And we double strain that into a champagne flute. Get all those little bits of ice out of there. You don't want to overshake it, otherwise you're going to dilute it too much. Yep. And then we're going to top it with sparkling wine, champagne. We used cava here. Normally a brut, you want something that's dry because you've already added sweetness into it. So any sparkling wine, any brut is going to work in this cocktail. Something a little bit nicer, something with some tight bubbles in there.
That's an interesting choice. I didn't know that. So cava is a Italian.
Spanish.
Spanish, I'm sorry. Thank you. Don't ask me as surrender my sommelier license right away. I'm sorry. What planet are we on? Who are you?
I'm not going to lie, Kevin. I just got to say that this is probably the best French 75 I've ever had.
Excellent. Good.
Yeah.
So we finish it with a lemon peel, either a twist, you can do a big tail or any kind of twist, and express that on the top. And definitely when you're pouring it, you got to be very careful because it will bubble up immediately. So definitely tip your glass, pour like you would a nice glass of champagne, and be gentle with it. Otherwise, it's going to explode in your face.
So how would you rate your French 75 here?
My French 75. I'm going to give it a 4.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's a
consistently
tough critic.
4s. Yeah. I think it's excellent. It's got enough dryness with the cava in there, but still got the sweetness from the sugar in there, and the lemon, and the cognac. It's all around. It's a well-rounded cocktail, and it's delicious.
Cool. Well, what do you think about the French 75 here? You already said it was awesome.
I mean, in all honesty, this is one of the best, one of the better cocktails I've ever had. I'm gonna have to give it a 5. I'm putting it right up there with the old fashioned.
Oh my goodness.
I've had a lot of the gin variations, and it kind of just nags at me. I'm a bit of a stickler for the name, and it does come. It's a French 75 because it has a kick. The cognac gives it that. Gin is just kind of. I've even had people do it with vodka. I mean, it is not the same cocktail as when you do it with cognac, and this is it's a great cocktail. It really is.
It really is. And so I had a little bit more to add to the tale about some aspects of the history around this drink. So I like the fact that you draw some delineation between when it was a cognac based drink and what moved it into being made by gin. Will and I were actually talking before the show today about what actually kind of precipitated that, and what were some of the factors that might have played into that. And I got to thinking about if I owned a bar and I looked at the number of times that I was actually making a French 75 with these classic ingredients, and I had the ability of switching cognac out for gin, that I can cut across 20 different drinks, as opposed to having that one bottle of cognac that I'm going to make like 2 drinks with. I'm gonna have the gin in my well all day long, and I'm going to probably push a gin forward version of French 75 all day long, and I'm probably going to add a sweeter champagne variety than a brut than you've done here tonight, which I consider really cutting a lot of corners, and I would probably slap somebody on the wrist for making that choice.
Rightfully so.
I'm sorry, but we actually talked about this, that if I were at a bar and I were ordering a French 75, I'm actually watching the bartender and what are the things that they're actually grabbing for, and to make it. If somebody is turning around and grabbing any cognac, it really doesn't matter, to be honest with you. If they're turning around and are probably adding a cognac from their back bar as opposed to drawing a gin from their well, then I know that that's somebody that actually knows what this drink is supposed to taste like. Because if somebody is grabbing for a Beefeaters, or God forbid something even worse that's an Old Tom's well variety, I'm sorry, but the only thing you're going to see at the end, after that moment, is the back of my head walking away from the bar.
Harsh customer.
I'm sorry, but I'm just going to. You wouldn't even get a full sentence from me going, I'm sorry, but you don't know what you're doing, and please just stop, because you're not really making this as well as you should, and I have lost as much respect as I would like to at that point. Could you just please pour me a Bud Light and call it even, okay? Some other things that I really thought were big transition moments for this drink is where Pierre Ferrand's cognac actually became available to make this drink once again here in America. So there was a huge gap in time where that cognac was not available here in the U.S. For a pretty long time, almost like 40 years. And it actually came back here into the States, and a lot of it flowed directly through New Orleans. In fact, the only place that I really thought that you could get a proper French 75 was at in New Orleans at Galatoire's. I really felt like that was one of the few places. Ornans was maybe another place that you could get one there in the New Orleans area, but that was about it. And part of it was just because those were the few places that would actually be able to stock the proper cognac to make this. Even with all that said, Kevin, I have to say that what a pleasure it was to actually enjoy your French 75 here tonight.
Excellent.
It just was, it was so awesome. Oh my God. If you were my bartender, I would gladly hand a $20 tip to you.
Appreciate it.
Not just because you're a good looking and handsome guy, because you made a really great drink. So
excellent.
Oh my goodness!
Just a really, great drink and a well-deserved 5. So some things that I actually do at home making this. I actually do garnish this with a brandy cherry. I know we talked about
brandy cherries.
Well, I
homemade
do.
brandy cherries.
I do. I like homemade brandy cherries, and there is something about the right combination of brandy and cognac that is infused with the right measure of sweetness that it just presents some layering component around everything, and that just that subtle tartness that comes off the cherry itself that comes into the drink. I don't know. It just it really kind of sets things off. I know you made it properly. I wouldn't say you made it proper tonight in a champagne flute, but I actually make this in a rocks glass when I make it at home, and it allows me to. You talked about some of the control mechanism of dealing with the champagne, and I think that's one of the things that I like about making it in a rocks glass. It doesn't explode, over the side of the glass, quite when I'm making it in a rocks glass as well. Plus, I think the brandy cherry it floats things a little bit better, along in that particular variety. So, those are some things that I really kind of pay attention to. I guess one of the big things, if I had to say about a French 75, is if you're going to make it with a gin, a crappy gin is going to equal a crappy French 75.
Exactly.
It's just the bottom line. Thou shalt not use well gin. If we could all just raise our hands.
Yeah, exactly.
Thou shalt buy Goodwill gin.
I'm sorry, but if if you're just going to reach down to something convenient, just, God, please stop, would you? I'd appreciate it. For those of us that are French 75s fans, I'd really appreciate that. So, a really great drink, though. God, Kevin, you blew it out of the water.
Excellent.
I can't wait to have another. So, it's just really great. Well, listen, these were 4 really awesome drinks that we got to go through in this episode. I really appreciate everyone joining us for this. We're really glad you stayed awake here for Medieval Poetry with Mary. Join us next week as we discover meter, rhyme, and the best fake British accents for poetry. Oh, wherefore art thou? Oh, Romeo, oh, Romeo, oh, Romeo. You have to use a bit of a Welsh accent, I guess, to really get through it well. Anyway, with that said, I want to thank our listeners here at Sip, Suds, and Smokes. Listen, you can catch all of our episodes online on iTunes, Soundcloud, TuneIn, Stitcher, PRX, YouTube, Uncle John's Basement, on the backside here at the Tippler, and, of course, at Spreaker, our native media host. They question every single time our credit card runs through, going, who are those people? Our terrestrial radio station hosts are always expanding, and right now they're going, Kevin, I'd like a gallon of French 75 delivered to us. We'll actually put these guys on the air. Listen, if you would like to hear this show on your favorite radio station, tell them about the French 75 and some really great guys that actually know how to talk about those drinks on the radio. Send them a note. Copy us as well. You can reach us online anytime at info@sipsudsandsmokes.com. Our daily tasting floats. Our tasting floats.
Definitely tasting floats.
I'll have another French 75. Our daily tasting notes flow out on Twitter every day at @SipSudSmoke. Our Facebook page is always buzzing with lots of news. Do us a favor and take the time to rate this episode if you're listening to us online. That's a really big help to us. You can tell everybody, oh my God, I think Will sounds really cute. and rate us a 5. That would be great. We get to see your feedback as well. I really want to thank my co-host. Will, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for having me.
It was really great. Kevin, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
You made the best thing I've ever had today, and that is really saying an awful lot. I really appreciate it quite a bit. Again, thank you for joining us. This is good old boy Mike asking you to keep on sipping.
This has been a One Tan Hand production of Sips, Suds, and Smokes, a program devoted to the appreciation of some of the finer slices of life. From the Dude in the Basement Studios, your hosts, the Good Old Boys, will see y'all next time.